Far from the noise of cities, beyond the highways and glowing lights, lies the countryside, quiet, endless, and still. To some, it's a place of peace. But those who've lived long enough out here, know that silence can hold its own kind of terror. There are roads that lead to nowhere, dirt paths swallowed by weeds, where the air feels heavy, and the only sound is your own breath. There are barns that stand alone in the fields, their doors swaying open with every gust, as if waiting for someone to step inside. Locals say the nights are different here. The sky looks darker, the stars more distant, and sometimes, when the wind passes through the corn or the tall grass, it carries something else, whispers. Some swear they've heard their names being called from beyond the tree-line. Others claim to have seen lights moving through the mist, flickering like lanterns searching for the lost. Animals sense it first. Dogs that once barked at everything now whimper at nothing. Cattle refuse to graze near certain patches of field. Old farmhouses, abandoned for decades, still show signs of movement, curtains drawn back, lights faintly glowing in rooms with no electricity. There are places where time doesn't seem to move at all. A rusted gate swinging back and forth with no wind. A child's toy lying in the middle of a dirt road that no one travels anymore. Footprints that appear overnight, leading nowhere. In every village, there's a story. Some tell it around campfires, others refuse to speak of it at all. Tales of people who went missing after hearing a knock on their door past midnight. Stories of voices whispering from wells, of faces seen in mirrors when no one else was home. These are not stories of fantasy, they are drawn from reports, recordings, and memories passed down by those who survived long enough to tell them. People who've seen the impossible and still carry the silence of it. Because out here, in the forgotten corners of the countryside, things don't just disappear, they linger. The ground remembers. The air listens. And sometimes, when the night grows too quiet, something answers back. These are the true stories, of those who vanished, of screams that echoed across empty fields, and shadows that never left. Tonight, we uncover 5 real accounts of countryside horror. Stay until the end, because story number 1 will make you question every lonely road you've ever driven down. 5 true scary countryside horror stories. Tonight, we're traveling far from the cities. Beyond the highways. Past the edges of the map, into the places people forget exist. Hidden deep within the countryside are towns that no longer appear on road signs. Villages where the last post office closed 30 years ago, and the only light after dusk comes from the moon. We'll walk through the cracked roads that lead nowhere. Past barns that lean under their own weight. Past houses still standing, not because they're strong, but because they've been left alone for too long. Out here, time feels different. The days stretch, the nights linger, and every sound carries a meaning you can't quite place. A knock on the window when no one's there. A faint whistle that seems to follow you from one field to the next. The people who live here, the few that remain, don't talk much about what they've seen. Their eyes shift when you ask questions. Some refuse to go out after sundown, claiming that once darkness falls, the land belongs to something else. We've gathered 5 accounts from across these forgotten places. Each one tied to a piece of land marked by tragedy, fear, and silence. Stories told by farmers, travelers, and those who swore never to return. Tonight, we'll listen to their voices. We'll step into their paths. And with every story, we'll go deeper into the dark heart of the countryside. You'll see what they saw. You'll hear what they heard. But remember, these are not tales written for thrill. They are records, traces of what's left behind when the night takes something it doesn't give back. So settle in, turn off the lights, and listen closely. Because in these places, even the wind has a story to tell. Which of these true countryside horrors will haunt you the most? Comment your answer, if you can make it to the end. Our first story takes us to the deep countryside of the American South, to a place the locals call Cedar Creek. A narrow stretch of road runs through the heart of the village. No streetlights. No houses nearby. Just an endless tunnel of mist and oak trees that bow over the asphalt like dark, watching faces. For decades, travelers have shared the same story, of a lantern that appears out of nowhere on foggy nights. A dim orange glow swaying gently in the darkness. Those who see it say it feels inviting, as though it's guiding them toward safety. But not everyone who follows it makes it back. Soft rain. The rhythmic squeak of wipers. The faint sound of a radio playing static. On a cold October night, 34-year-old truck driver Daniel Reeves was heading home after a long delivery run. He'd taken the back roads to save time, a mistake he'd never repeat. The fog rolled in thick, the kind that eats up your headlights and leaves the world small and colorless. Daniel slowed his truck, leaning forward, squinting through the windshield. The radio hissed with static. His fuel gauge blinked low. It was 12:47 a.m. when he first saw it, a faint, flickering light up ahead, moving slowly across the road. At first, Daniel thought it was another driver, maybe a farmer, or someone checking a fence. He slowed down and flashed his headlights, hoping to catch attention. The light ahead stopped moving. Then, it turned, facing him directly. He could make out a shape now. Someone holding a lantern. The glow was dim but steady, a warm amber that pulsed faintly through the fog. Daniel rolled down his window and shouted, "Hey, you need help?" No response. Just the faint sound of dripping water. He stopped the truck, engine idling, and stepped out. The cold hit him immediately, sharp, unnatural. The kind that doesn't belong in early autumn. The lantern began to move again, slow and deliberate, crossing to the other side of the road. It seemed to be leading him toward the trees. Daniel followed. Each step sank into soft, wet soil. The beam from his flashlight barely reached a few feet ahead. The figure was only 20 paces away now, thin, tall, hunched slightly. The lantern swung from its hand in long, unnatural arcs. As he got closer, Daniel began to notice the details. The hand holding the lantern wasn't moving right, the fingers stiff, the wrist limp, as though the light were dragging it along. He called out again, his breath clouding in the air. The lantern stopped. The figure turned toward him. Through the fog, Daniel could see a face, or what was left of one. The skin was gray, stretched thin. The mouth hung open as though frozen mid-scream. Where the eyes should have been, only black hollows stared back at him. The lantern tilted, spilling light across the trees, and in that instant, Daniel realized the figure wasn't standing on the ground. Its feet were inches above it, dangling slightly, as if suspended by something unseen. Daniel stumbled backward, flashlight shaking. He turned and ran, breath ragged, slipping on the wet ground as he sprinted toward his truck. Behind him, he heard the faint, rhythmic creak of rope, and the soft whisper of his own name. Morning, a local farmer spotted Daniel's truck abandoned by the roadside near Cedar Creek. The driver's door hung open. The headlights were still on, cutting through the morning mist. His keys were in the ignition. His wallet was still on the dashboard. But Daniel Reeves was gone. Search teams combed the woods for 2 days, no footprints, no struggle, no body. The only thing they found was a lantern resting by the edge of the creek. Its glass was cracked, its handle rusted, and yet, somehow, the flame inside still burned. To this day, travelers along that same road report seeing a light moving through the fog near midnight. Locals say it's Daniel, still trying to find his way home. Others say it's something older, using his voice to draw in the next one. Would you stop for a light on a dark road? Our second story takes us to a place known as Bramble Hollow, a thick stretch of woodland behind an abandoned farmhouse in northern Tennessee. The house stands half-collapsed at the edge of a long-forgotten road. Its roof caved in, its porch swallowed by weeds. Locals say the forest behind it cries at night. They call it the woods that never sleep. For decades, people living nearby have reported hearing screams echoing through the trees, not the cries of animals, not the sound of wind, but human screams. Some say it's a woman. Others say it's many voices at once. And yet, no one has ever found the source. In the fall of 2018, four friends, high school seniors from a nearby town, decided to visit Bramble Hollow. They'd read about the place online, in a thread that dared people to spend a night near the old farmhouse. The group arrived just before sunset. They parked their car by the roadside and hiked through the overgrown trail leading into the forest. The air was heavy with the smell of wet leaves and moss. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, no insects, no birds, just the sound of their boots pressing into damp earth. They set up camp near a clearing by the farmhouse ruins, laughing nervously as the sky dimmed into a dull orange haze. The stories didn't scare them, at least, not yet. Around midnight, the group began to hear something faint, like a cry carried by the wind. They paused their conversation, listening. At first, it sounded far away, a single voice, high and thin, echoing from deep inside the woods. Then another joined it. And another. The sound wasn't steady. It came in bursts, sharp, uneven, as if someone were gasping between screams. One of the teens, a boy named Tyler, grabbed his phone and started recording. But the audio glitched immediately, the screen flickered, freezing for a few seconds before shutting off entirely. The others insisted it was an animal. Maybe a fox. Maybe an owl. But deep down, they all felt the same cold, crawling sense that what they were hearing was human. Then, the screaming stopped. The woods went completely still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Tyler and one of the girls, Amber, decided to walk a few meters toward the sound. They moved slowly, their flashlights cutting thin beams through the fog. Just a few feet beyond their campsite, they began to see things, pieces of fabric hanging from the trees. Torn scraps of clothing, faded and dirty, fluttering in the cold breeze. The closer they looked, the more they found, dozens of pieces, stretched along the branches, some tied in knots, others nailed to trunks. Amber whispered, "Someone's been here." Tyler raised his flashlight higher. A few yards ahead, he saw something that made his arm tremble. One of the rags wasn't a cloth, it was a sleeve. Still attached to a human arm. They screamed, stumbling back toward the camp. But when they reached it, the fire was gone. The tents were gone. The other two campers were nowhere to be found. Tyler grabbed Amber's hand and ran. But no matter which way they turned, the path kept looping. The same trees, the same broken log, the same half-buried tire appeared again and again. Their flashlights began to flicker. And then, both lights went out. The following morning, a rescue team found the group's car still parked along the road. The campsite was exactly as they'd left it. The tents upright, sleeping bags untouched, the fire pit cold. Their phones were still there. Tyler's had one file left in it, a short, corrupted video showing static and the sound of screaming before cutting off entirely. None of the four teens were ever found. No footprints. No signs of struggle. Nothing. Since that night, hikers who pass near Bramble Hollow claim they still hear those same cries echoing through the trees after midnight. Some say it's the wind. Others say it's the forest remembering. Would you dare camp here, alone? There's a farmhouse on the edge of Lorne County, a place locals don't speak of anymore. Its paint has long peeled away, its windows clouded with dust and time. No one's lived there in over 30 years, until one spring morning, a young couple decided to change that. They were dreamers, Evan and Claire. City people who thought country silence meant peace. The farmhouse came cheap. Too cheap. The locals told them stories, of voices in the walls, of lanterns seen glowing through the broken windows at midnight, but they laughed it off. They wanted a fresh start. And for the first few days, it was quiet. Until the fourth night. Evan woke to a slow, dragging sound, footsteps above the bedroom ceiling. Heavy, measured, deliberate. But the second floor had collapsed years ago. Evan grabbed a flashlight. The beam flickered as he shined it toward the ceiling, but there was nothing. Only silence. Until the next night. They tried to ignore it. Told themselves it was the wind, or rats in the walls. But on the sixth night, Claire found muddy footprints leading from the hallway to the side of their bed. Evan called the county records office the next morning. The woman on the phone paused when he gave the address. She told him the farmhouse had belonged to the Merrow family, farmers who vanished one winter without a trace. Their dinner was still on the table when the sheriff broke the door down. That night, Claire swore she heard someone crying in the kitchen. When Evan went to check, every cabinet door was open. The words, "Feed US" were scratched into the wall. He ran his hand over the markings, and the wood was still warm. By dawn, they were gone. They didn't pack. Didn't even take the car keys. Neighbors said they saw Evan running barefoot through the fields. Claire never spoke about what she saw upstairs. To this day, the farmhouse still stands. Untouched. At night, a single light burns in the upstairs window, though the electricity was cut off decades ago. If you heard footsteps above your bed, and knew no one else was home, would you stay, or would you run? On a long stretch of rural highway between Pine Ridge and Millhaven, there's a story that never seems to fade. Truckers call it the roadside bride. They say if you drive that road after midnight, when the fog covers the fields like a blanket, you might see her standing by the bend. Waiting. It was the spring of 1995 when Ray Dalton, a long-haul driver, was making his final delivery for the night. Rain had been falling for hours, the kind that blurs the windshield and swallows headlights whole. He was tired, hungry, and 30 miles from home. That's when he saw her, standing by the roadside, drenched in rain, barefoot, clutching a bouquet. She looked young. Maybe mid-20s. Her white dress was torn and smeared with mud. Her eyes, wide, empty, caught the reflection of his headlights. Without thinking, Ray pulled over. He rolled down the window, asked if she needed help. She didn't answer at first. Just stood there, trembling. Then she whispered, "I just want to go home." Ray nodded. Told her to get in. The woman climbs into the passenger seat. Her veil clings to her shoulders. She doesn't look at him. Only stares out the window as rain streams down the glass. The miles rolled by in silence. Ray tried to make small talk, asked if she'd had car trouble. She didn't respond. Then, softly, she said something he would never forget. "He left me there, said he'd come back, but he never did. When Ray glanced over, she was gone. No door opened. No sound. Only her bouquet lay on the seat beside him, soaked and dripping red. Ray's hand trembles as he picks up the wilted flowers. The passenger seat glistens with raindrops. His reflection in the rearview mirror, pale, confused, terrified. He slammed the brakes, jumped out, shouting into the rain. Nothing. Only fog stretching for miles. When he finally calmed down, Ray noticed something glowing ahead, a small wooden cross by the side of the road. He walked closer. A name was carved into it. Anna Mae Carter, died April 14, 1963. On her wedding night. The next morning, Ray told the sheriff what happened. The old man just nodded. Said he wasn't the first to pick her up, and probably wouldn't be the last. Every driver who sees her swears it's the same thing, a crying bride, stranded by the curve, always asking for a ride home. And when the fog gets thick, when the road ahead feels too quiet, they say she appears again, bouquet in hand, veil torn by the wind, waiting for someone kind enough to stop. If you saw her by the road, soaked, crying, lost, would you stop to offer her a ride? Or keep driving, hoping she never turns to look at you? There's a place deep in the valley where the map fades to white. Locals call it Gray Hollow, a farming settlement that vanished overnight more than 50 years ago. No one knows how the sickness started. For years, no one dared to go near it. The air was said to carry the disease that killed the town. But in the summer of 2021, a group of urban explorers, 3 men and 1 woman, decided to film a documentary there. Their channel specialized in haunted places. Gray Hollow would be their biggest project yet. They arrived just before dusk. The town was completely silent. Even the birds didn't sing. The only sound was the steady rustle of dry stalks in the fields. They joked at first, posing beside the scarecrows, pretending to interview them for laughs. But the laughter faded quickly. Each time they turned the camera back on, the scarecrows seemed different. Moved. Shifted slightly from where they'd been before. One of the explorers whispers, "Didn't that one have its head tilted before?" The wind dies completely. They split up to get better shots. One followed a dirt trail leading toward the church at the edge of the field. The others stayed near the barns. A few minutes later, his voice came over the radio, shaky, whispering that he'd found something. Then, nothing but static. When they reached the church, the doors hung open. Inside, the pews were filled with scarecrows, every one of them seated, hands folded like they were waiting for service to begin. They called for their friend, but the only answer came from his camera, lying in the field behind the building. Still recording. When they pressed play, the footage showed their friend walking between the scarecrows. He's laughing nervously, saying their faces looked almost human. Then the camera shakes, he gasps, and the lens points down. For a few seconds, nothing moves. Then, one scarecrow turns its head toward the camera. Close-up of the video feed. A burlap face smeared with dirt slowly pivots to look directly into the lens. The eyes, not buttons, not cloth, something wet and dark glints beneath the sack. The screen cuts to black. Their footage was found weeks later, hidden on a damaged hard drive left inside an abandoned motel room. No one knows what happened to the explorers. Their car was still parked near the main road. The only thing missing was one of the scarecrows. Do you believe something evil can live in silence? Or does it only awaken when someone decides to listen? 5 stories from the quietest corners of the earth. Each one hidden beneath the sound of the wind, the creak of an old house, the stillness of a field. But there's something else, something they all share. Whispers that never fade. They say these stories are unconnected. That they're just tales, warnings whispered around campfires to keep travelers cautious. But if you watched closely, you saw it, didn't you? That mark, the one you've seen again and again, isn't random. It's been found in every major rural disappearance across 5 countries over the last century. Always carved, burned, or stitched near the seam. Always the same shape. And no one, not historians, not police, not locals, can explain what it means. What if these weren't 5 stories at all, but 5 chapters of the same one? We've gathered evidence, maps, eyewitness accounts, old police reports. Every location forms a pattern, a perfect circle on the map. And in the center of that circle, nothing. Just a patch of land known as the Hollow's Mouth. In our next video, we'll travel there. We'll uncover what's buried beneath the soil of Grey Hollow, and why that same symbol appears wherever silence lives the longest. Because silence isn't empty. It's waiting. The symbol is real. You'll see it again. Which story stayed with you? Comment below, and if you think you've seen that symbol before, send us your proof. Subscribe. Because what comes next will explain everything. The countryside is quiet, but sometimes the silence screams. Maybe that's why so many vanish here. Because they listen too closely. Because they stay too long. If you made it to the end, you've already heard it. The sound that lives between the wind and the soil. The one that never stops. Comment, I heard the scream. Let's see how many of you actually did. And remember, we bring you real stories from the quietest places on earth, where the silence always hides something. Don't forget to like and subscribe.